Christmas is a miraculous thing. It comes around every year, and every year the same objections and questions get asked. Isn't it all just commercial? Why do people have to be so extra about it? What's so good about Christmas anyways? And how come all the Christmas parties became holiday parties? None of it sounds very miraculous or magical. The gold on the tinsel is as artificial as the good face you put on to see your estranged family around the dinner table. But we take the miraculous for granted, and not in a good way. Sure, we have fun talking about giants, cryptids, and the occasional global cabal, but the face value miracles of Scripture have lost their luster. Yet at Christmas, we celebrate the miracle of the incarnation, the God-man come as a little baby. Join me today as my guest and I discuss the true miracles of Christmas and how to keep ourselves from singing Here I Raise My Ebenezer one week to being Ebenezer Scrooge the next. This is God Rest Ye Merry with Doug Wilson. Welcome to the Sword and Staff Revenant. I'm your host, Coleman Barber. I'm one of the elders at Proclaim Church in Bonner Springs, Kansas. Joining me today is Pastor Doug Wilson. Doug is senior minister at Christ Church, Moscow, Idaho, writer of many books, including the one that we'll be talking about today. You've also written a bunch of blogs, like a lot of blogs. He's started a school, a college, and a publishing company. Most importantly, though, on theme for a Christmas episode today, Doug is notoriously a very jolly guy, right?
Yeah.
All right. Doug, is there anything else that you want to tell our listeners today?
No, that about covers the waterfront.
There we go. Especially the jolly part, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. All right. Great. Well, hey, Doug, on our podcast, we're used to talking about a lot of different kind of weird or fringy things. And we're used to doing that, trying to understand those things from a Christian perspective and a Christian worldview. But I think that something that can get lost in that pursuit is just taking at face value the miracle and mystery that we find in Scripture. So in your book, his book is called God Rest You Merry. It's about Christmas. And it's great. I read through it. I've listened through it and went back through it a couple times. Early on in your book, you talk about the mystery of godliness from 1 Timothy 3:16, namely that God was manifest in the flesh. So can you tell us a little bit what's going on with this mystery there?
Sure. One of the things the incarnation does is it divides there are different types of miracle. Okay, the incarnation is a stupendous miracle, and it's so miraculous we can't even see what's going on. Okay, so when Jesus walks on the water, that's one kind of miracle. We can see the incongruity. We can see the thing that isn't happening that normally happens. So we don't understand how, but we do understand what the miracle is. Okay. On the incarnation, it took the church 3 centuries to figure out what the miracle was. Right? Or they knew what the miracle was, but they had to spend 3 centuries hammering out how to frame it or how to talk about it so that we don't get ourselves in big trouble. So, and the church wonderfully at the Council of Nicaea in 325 determined that Jesus is fully God, fully man. And then at the Council of Chalcedon in the next century, they had to say, all right, if Jesus is fully God, then what is the relationship of his human nature and his divine nature? How do they comport together? And so that took a while to hammer out, to figure out. So what they settled on, which I think was true wisdom, was that humanity was taken up into God. It's not as though you had a human form with man outside and God inside, like a man might put on a gorilla suit. It's not a
Hmm.
man inside and a gorilla outside. That was one rejected heresy, where God inside, man outside is not fully man, not fully God. Um, there's another heresy that said, well, the humanity was just an appearance. It was just like a projection. He didn't really become a true man. That was rejected also. And so the Council of Chalcedon said basically he's Jesus of Nazareth is fully God and fully man, and that which is predicated of the divine nature can be predicated of the person, and that which is predicated of the human nature can be predicated of the person. But that which is predicated of one nature cannot be predicated of the other nature.
Hmm.
Um, so infinite, we're not left trying to claim that finitude is the same as infinitude or that God is the same as man. It just simply isn't. But Jesus of Nazareth is God, and
Yeah.
Jesus of Nazareth is fully man, because everything that he assumes in the incarnation is capable of redemption. And anything that he does not assume, let's say someone says he did not assume a human soul. Well, that leaves our human souls dirty and unredeemed. If he did not assume a human body, that would leave our bodies unredeemed. What he assumes, he redeems.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I think that that's one of the things that you bring out in your book is Christmas is this unique time that we celebrate the reality of this thing happening, right?
Correct.
Oftentimes we focus so much on the cross, which is vital. I mean, it's essential to the gospel, right? But like none of those things happen without the incarnation, and we take it for granted so often, especially in the Christmas season, because it's overrun with all these other things and traditions, and there's
Yeah.
all kinds of back and forth on those things, but it's really easy to forget that the baby that this whole thing is surrounding is miraculous in himself. Like there's something different between uh Jesus walking on the water, showing his dominion over creation, and God becoming man. Like
Right.
it's fundamentally different things. Um, I think it was C.S. Lewis somewhere in Mere Christianity. It's been several years since I've read that book, but I think he phrases it this way: like oftentimes we look at the miracle of the resurrection and we think like, oh, well, how could God bring someone back to life? And that is miraculous, but like the greater miracle is that God became man. Like
Mhm.
if God were to die and he did, the thing you would assume he could do is come back to life, right?
Right.
um, the thing you don't assume that God would do is become a man, and we get to
There's,
celebrate that in Christmas. So, um, yeah, it's just this, and I think one of the things too that is evidence to just how incredible this is that history's split on it. And I know we've got the dates a little bit off in history, but we've got BC and we've got AD as long as you're, a traditionalist here. And and this event splits all of history. It fundamentally shifts things.
right. And unbelieving scholars want to change it. They want to make it Common Era, BCE, before Common Era, and CE Common Era. Well, common why?
Yeah,
Common
coming to what?
common common to what? And
Yeah.
I'd say, oh, I'm happy to do that. Christ's Empire, CE, before Christ's Empire, BCE.
Yeah. I don't know how much of a meme aficionado you are, but there's a great, it's like the NPC meme. It's like the gray character with, the
Yeah.
dots for eyes and things. And somebody makes that argument and their eyes go from, up to just angry furrowed brows when they bring up that point. So awesome. Well, we're talking to an audience right now that needs no convincing of the reality of the supernatural. It's kind of, why they're here and they're listening.
Right.
But even within our camp, there's, and certainly for those who may just stumble on this podcast, it can be our tendency to try and explain some of the more curious aspects of the Christmas story away. And you
Yeah.
have a bit here in your book where you talk a little bit about the Star of Bethlehem,
Yeah.
Um, do we just have naturally occurring patterns that are matching up here that are leading the Magi to Christ, or what's your take?
Yeah. So my take is this, that I would resort to Lewis again in the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, where Eustace is rebuked. Even in your world, my son, a flaming ball of gas is not what a star is. It's only what it's made of. Okay.
Hmm.
I am more than the chemicals that make up my body. So the modern materialist is guilty of the fallacy of nothing buttery, um, that we are nothing but the molecules, the material molecules that make us up, which every Christian stoutly denies because we believe that we are body, soul, and spirit. And if you could put my soul under a microscope, it wouldn't be a soul. You can't look at it that way.
Hmm.
You can't evaluate it that way. So I am more than the sum total of my physical parts, right? Now, in the medieval cosmology, that same reality was understood with regard to celestial beings, stars. Um, there was some debate uh, in the medieval period. There was debate over whether stars were huge animals, or if the star, the body of the star, was like an airplane that the pilot flies.
Mm.
Right. But one thing is sure, the reason I'm talking this way is because the Star of Bethlehem, whatever it was, came down into our atmosphere and picked out a house,
Mm.
right? It now I understand. I'm going to cram a bunch of stuff here. I take the Magi. We presume that there were three of them, guessing from the number of gifts, the
Hmm.
gold, frankincense, and myrrh. But we're never told that there were three men. So the Magi I take as Zoroastrian astrologers,
Okay.
and and I believe they saw an unusual formation in the sky, the way astrologers do, and they saw this star appear, and they knew to come to Israel. Uh, I also would say, I also argue that Balaam was a true prophet. He was not a true man, but he was a true prophet. He
Mm.
had the true prophetic gift,
Yeah.
but he was kind of a sly dog also. And the Israelites killed him when they conquered the land. And the New Testament identifies him as an unrighteous man, but he was genuinely a prophet.
Yeah.
And Balaam prophesied that a star shall arise in Jacob, right? And and I believe that these Zoroastrian astrologers were from the east, like Balaam was, and they had that information, and they saw the star. They came to Israel, and I think all of that would have been what we would recognize as the activity of astrologers.
Hmm.
But then when they come to Herod, and Herod tells them to go find the baby. Uh, they're given the clue of Bethlehem, which is just like 6 miles from Jerusalem, depending on how big the towns were at the time. It's not that far away.
Hmm.
And they're on their way to Bethlehem, and they see the star again, which is a cause of great rejoicing. And the star identifies, picks out, stops over a house.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you have the Magi doing this, identifying a house by astrological means, they're doing some serious math in the dark. Serious math in the dark on the back of a camel. No, 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 carry the two. Turn left,
Mm.
turn left. Um, I think it is far more likely that a star appeared over the house where uh, Jesus was, which is what the text plainly says. Now, if you say that a star is a flaming ball of gas hundreds of times larger than our Earth, then there's no conceivable way for it to park 150 feet above a house.
Yeah.
in Bethlehem without incinerating our planet. Okay.
Right.
Uh, and so people say, well, that's why people will then say, oh, it's mythological or whatever. But for the medievals, this presented no problem at all.
Hmm.
Because either the pilot of that star that the Magi had seen a couple years before, the pilot detaches from the airplane and comes down and identifies the house, or the spirit of the star comes down in much the same way that, if your readers are familiar with C.S. Lewis's book, That Hideous Strength, in much the same way that the Oyarsa come down in order to take possession of Merlin, the magician. So the planet remains in the heavens, but the entity associated with the planet comes down in order to perform a particular function. Now that happened. That's my view of what actually happened.
Mm.
I think the same thing happens with the shepherds in the field. Only there, it's a bunch of stars uh, come down and are able to speak. I think they were singing. It doesn't say they were singing, but I think they had to have been singing. They announced the good news to the shepherds. So they have to be close enough to be audible, right?
Right.
And then they recede back into the heavens and take their places in the heavens. Now, this tells me, if I believe the Bible, this tells me that stars are not what Carl Sagan thinks they are.
Yeah.
If you take an unbelieving, materialistic, secular scientist who just looks at the heavens and sees a debris field of dead rock and flaming gas and lots of empty space, I would say, I'm sorry, the heavens declare the glory of God, not the emptiness and vacuity of your philosophy.
Yeah. Yeah. Plus, there wasn't a bunch of burnt shepherds and roast mutton after
Right.
the song. So it's not just a big, fire
Exactly.
that's happening. So, yeah.
So
One of the things,
the message here, I would say to all Christians everywhere, is believe your Christmas cards.
yeah. Yeah. And I think I went through a really similar, the trajectory that I think a lot of burgeoning intellectual Christians go through is you see the Christmas cards and in your mind you've got or you see a nativity set or something, you have the star just sitting right over the top and it's like, okay, well, that's what happened. And then you get smart enough to recognize, well, perhaps it was, perhaps they were more advanced in their mathematics than we once thought and things like that. And to some degree that's probably true, but also, no, it seems pretty clear that, hey, there's a star that rested over a house, and we
Yeah.
have to deal with that as Christians. We have to take that seriously. Like, I mean, it baffles me sometimes how we as Christians have such a hard time believing miraculous things. Because everything is predicated on that. And one of the things that I was thinking about regarding the star and the angel as I was reading that part of, I think it's your first chapter, and as we were talking here, is some of the evidence comes out in tradition too, right? Like on a Christmas tree,
Yeah.
which, came way, way later.
Yeah.
But we celebrate this aspect of Christmas by topping the Christmas tree. And that's pretty interchangeable between two things that in actuality are one thing, right? It's either a Christmas star on top of your tree or it's a Christmas angel. Um, and why is that? Maybe we should think about those things and not just reject tradition everywhere.
Very
Um,
good.
so yeah. Um, yeah.
If I could say one thing about the belief in miracles, um, the thing I would want to press on Christians who sometimes feel sheepish about believing in miracles is that everybody believes in them.
Hmm.
Everybody believes in them. We're walking around in one. When the philosopher asks, why is there something rather than nothing at all? The fact that the materialist is confronted with the same amazing stuff that we are.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I'll just give a few examples. Years ago, I was touring with Christopher Hitchens, and we appeared on a show that Joy Behar had at the time. And it was Christopher Hitchens, me, and Joy Behar, and I think one other person. And they were a bunch of secularists, and they got off onto anybody who believes the Bible is a dope. The Bible has talking animals. Oh, the serpent talking and Balaam's donkey talking. And so their whole take was the Bible has talking animals. Ho ho ho. What kind of corn pone believes that? And if I tried to give a learned scholarly response, they just would have been yucking it up even more.
Mm-hmm.
So what I said was, but we're animals and we talk. And it was like they all walked into a pole. Because I said, basically, I believe in talking animals, yes, but so do you. You believe in talking animals.
You're talking to one right now.
You're talking to one
Yeah.
right now. What's your problem? Or they'll say, you believe in the resurrection of the dead. You believe your body is going to go in the ground, and then it's going to come back from the ground, and you're going to live again. And I say, wait, we both believe in this can happen. You think that we evolved out of dirt. I believe that God fashioned Adam out of dirt. So we both believe that you and I are here having life arisen from non-life.
If you are enjoying this episode of Sword and Staff Revenant and want to support the show, then you can head over to swordandstaff.creator-spring.com. We have shirts and mugs in multiple colors, stickers for all of you laptop graffiti artists out there, and even a pint glass for your favorite brew. You can support the show and get something for yourself as well. Links in the show notes and on social. Thank you for your support.
So we both believe that you and I are here having life arisen from non-life. You believe that? I believe that. I believe God did it. You believe nobody did it. But we both agree on the fact of it, right? Yeah. And the difference between you and me is I think it's going to happen again.
Yeah.
You think it happened once all by itself. I think it happens twice with God superintending it. And my belief in the miracle is far less far-fetched than yours, because you have these tricks happening and no magician, right?
Yeah.
I'm looking at these marvelous tricks, and at least I've got a magician up there who's doing them. Yeah. But we all have them.
Yeah. Well, C.S. Lewis makes a real similar argument also in Mere Christianity, talking about the evolutionists and what he must believe in order to get the kind of beings that we are, right? He said if evolution was like, going to be occurring naturally as they think, then we would have just had thicker shells and a harder carapace. But no, we have minds able to understand and reason and interact with creation and things like that. And it's like, your argument kind of falls flat. Now, I don't know exactly where he landed, but that's not the point. The point is that, yeah, you're right. No matter how hardened someone is as an atheist or a materialist, like there's some belief in a miracle somewhere back there. Right. Things don't just happen. So it's interesting. We're talking about the Christmas star and the belief in miracles and things. I think that sometimes Christians can fall into playing by the rules of of the camps that we think that we're actually fighting against. So, for instance, people might push back on, well, hey, how does a star come down and that sort of thing. But then we look at things like the sun stopping for Joshua, right? And you have one camp that would say, oh, well, that can never be. because of physics and science and all these different things would just be completely out of whack, and you come up with all kinds of reasons as to why that couldn't have happened, right? So this just must be mythology. This must be symbolism. It didn't really happen. Or I think you have this other camp that goes, well, it did happen, but what we're going to have to do in order to make that happen is we're going to have to change everything about physics and science and what we know and what we've observed and things like that. And so you have to come up with a brand new cosmology and reinterpret all of the verses about the makeup of the earth to be a little bit flatter, if you catch what I'm saying. But we fall into those camps instead of just taking it as like, no, like it's perfectly within God's ability to just stop the sun and sustain everything else because he already is sustaining everything else, right?
Right. It's just if you believe that this world is God's spoken word, as I do, and he speaks with regularity in what we have come to call natural laws, which is his kindness to us that enables us to, cook an egg, and enables us to build a house, cook an egg, fry a steak, whatever. If God, who's speaking the word, varies what he speaks, there's nothing contradictory
Mm-hmm.
or confusing about it. It's not as though we are saying, and then God came down and drew round squares. Jesus, Lewis again says, nonsense doesn't cease to be nonsense simply because we preface it with the words God can.
Mm-hmm.
So God cannot contradict his own nature and character. So Jesus could walk on water. He could turn water to wine. He could feed the multitude, but he couldn't tell lies and he couldn't draw round squares
Mm-hmm.
because those actions would contradict his very nature. Okay, but God could have made the world where all the maple trees had orange bark if he wanted, but he didn't. So the way maple trees look to us is simply God's sovereign good pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
And if he decided to speak the word to make maple tree bark orange for a week, that would contradict nothing. It would simply
Right.
be a variation of what he was telling us.
It'd be that really cool week in history where all the
But
the maple trees were orange.
which 100 years out, the learned people denied ever happened.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Or it was, 1,000 years out, everybody said it was just, a mythological event.
Yeah,
So
hallucination.
great. Kind of moving on, as part of this book, and maybe this is a little bit of a different topic than what most of our listeners are used to, but I think it all ties together. I'll try to tie it together depending on, where we go with this. But you're not supposed to talk about politics during Christmas, right? Which
Unless it's
that's
fun.
a
Unless it's fun.
perfect year to not talk about them, right? But you make the argument in your book that Christmas by its nature is political,
Yes.
right? Why is that?
Well, the politicians of the day took an intense interest in it,
Sure did.
right? Um, so the Magi arrived in Jerusalem, and we're asking about where's this king that was born, and it says that Herod was unsettled and the whole city was unsettled. The arrival of the Magi was front page news. What's going on? And uh, rulers always take intense interest in the possible arrival of a rival, which Herod most certainly did. And uh, the prophecy of the coming Christ said the scepter will not depart from Judah uh, until his arrival. He is the promised king of the increase of his government. There will be no end. The government will be upon his shoulder. He is the Prince of Peace. King of Kings, Lord of Lords. There is, and then when Jesus inaugurates his ministry, he does it by announcing that the kingdom of God is near. The kingdom of God has
Hmm.
arrived. Um, well, kingdoms are political.
Yeah.
It's
Just
just,
a little bit.
yeah, you can't say it's all metaphorical. A kingdom is political. And the early Christians were charged with denying the authority of Caesar. They're going around talking about the authority of this other character named Jesus, denying the authority of Caesar. Well, no, they were denying the absolute authority of Caesar. They were denying divinity to Caesar,
Hmm.
but they were not divine. They were not denying human authority to him, but rather um, sort of the overweening grasping after power that godless men give way to. So there is absolutely no way to talk about Caesar Augustus and Herod and Pontius Pilate without that being political.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those things where, I mean, the story of Christmas is, the incarnation means the king is here.
Yeah.
And when we say the king, we mean capital T, capital K. The king is here.
Okay.
And all other authorities are underneath him. And I think that people listening are probably going like, what, why is Coleman talking about politics? This is mostly a paranormal podcast. But here's why I think it's important is because you have sort of these camps that tend to think that the gospel is not political in some sense, that it's all very individual. It doesn't have these far-reaching implications in our life here and now, right? But then you have sort of this other side that goes, no, 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 it is. Um, but Christ's kingdom is something that's separate and other. And you would think that those people who would say, okay, well, the kingdom is this spiritual reality and not in the physical, you'd think that they would be more open to the idea of Christ as, having disarmed the powers and the principalities and things like that. And this is where it dips into the little bit more weird Christianity, I suppose. Yet they should be the ones who are the most they should be the ones who are the most ready to go like, yeah, Jesus king over all of it, seen, unseen. And that includes all of the unseen.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things that we focus on really hard on this podcast is Christ came as king through the cross, won victory, not just over the kingdoms of the earth. That's like the cool, post mill, put it on our sleeves sort of thing. But there's this unseen reality of Christ's kingship where he put those enemies under his feet and is through the church throughout all history, and that's why Christmas is political.
Yeah.
um
Inescapably political.
yeah.
And the non-believers frequently know that that's true more than we do.
Hmm.
That's why they want it to be a winter tree uh, in your town square,
Yeah.
uh, a winter festival or happy holiday, or there really is a war on Christmas.
Hmm. Yeah, it's the mayor's tree lighting, not
Yeah.
not the Christmas tree lighting for the town, so that sort of thing. um Great. So in that, talking about Christmas trees and things like that, Christmas is one of those seasons in the year that is just inherently liturgical. We talk a lot about liturgy on this podcast as well because it's so in intertwined with the spiritual nourishment. We're always telling people about how they actually need to go to church, partake of the sacraments, things like that, rather than partaking of pagan witchcraft and things things of that nature. Um, in your book, you have a whole section. I mean, it's actually probably the last third or so of the book that is just Advent devotionals. Why write an Advent devotional?
Because otherwise, if we don't um, teach the word in conjunction with our holidays, then our holidays are going to become empty rituals running on inertia only. But at the end of the process, you're going to think that it's all about silver bells. What is Christmas all about? Well, the essence of Christmas is silver bells or mistletoe. Um, no, it's fine to decorate and have traditions and everything, but you want, if you don't keep the Word of God central to the whole process, your traditions of men will eventually supplant the Christmas message. Um, uh, and that's what Jesus rebukes the Pharisees. You have set aside the teachings of God and replaced them with traditions of men. Now, uh, we have traditions necessarily because we live in time.
Hmm.
Uh, there's the joke of the old seasoned Baptist pastor who said, "We Baptists don't believe in tradition." He said it's contrary to our historic position. Everybody has tradition. And so what you want to do is make sure you keep the word central
Hmm.
as you observe those traditions. Because otherwise it's going to drift into folly.
Yeah.
And if you're going to observe Advent, as I think you should, it's a good thing to remind yourself constantly, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this?
Right. Yeah, because you run the risk of them being overrun by the traditions of men, but oftentimes those traditions of men then come along with baggage, right? They can come along with spiritual baggage that co-ops, and then that's what happens with that's the concern that a lot of people have. In our last episode, I talked with Glenn Sunshine, and there's a lot of concern around Christmas generally because of some of the either shared things or the not shared things that people try to say are shared things with pagan roots and that sort of thing. But if you don't center your traditions on Christ, then those things can creep in, right?
Yeah.
So
And
it's
if I could point this out, worrying about excessive consumerism in the Christmas season is a tradition,
mm,
right?
yeah,
Um, and and people simply assume because they don't reflect on their traditions, that they just it becomes sort of self-evident to them, like
mm,
the air around them that they're dependent upon, but they don't know why they're saying what they're saying. Oh, look at all those people out there buying gifts for other people. What an outrage. Listen, Grumpus, don't listen to yourself.
yeah, yeah. Well, I've got one last question for you. It's more of just a fun one, but I figured
All right.
it's not Christmas when we're recording this, but it'll be just about Christmas. I think it's going to be coming out like the week of Christmas,
Okay.
when this actually drops. So, uh, this is a four-part question.
Okay.
Okay. What is your favorite Christmas dish, drink, dessert, and your favorite Christmas carol?
Okay. So, uh, favorite Christmas dish.
Dish, yes.
Okay. I would have to say the cheesy potatoes.
Oh, yes. My mother makes some incredible
Okay.
cheesy potatoes. Are they the kind with the cornflakes on top?
I like those too, but in the recipe in our family doesn't have those, but it's crispy brown on the top and it's just marvelous. So, but
I'll
that's hard.
allow it. I'll allow it
It's
because of the
all
crispy
right.
brown only.
It, it's hard to pick because if you said what are your top favorite seven top favorite Christmas dishes, I could probably fill the list out. So
Indeed. Christmas is known for good food. So
yeah,
so that's good. All right, so the next one was drink. Favorite Christmas drink.
um, there's uh, a hot toddy that we regularly have that I really like.
Not even with a cold.
No,
That's great. Okay, dessert.
Dessert. Man, I would basically, um, it's pie.
Correct.
It's pie. And we have a thing where on Boxing Day or the day after Christmas, the whole family has a mid-morning um, brunch with grazing on all the leftover pies. So,
Mm,
there's an array of pies. Um, and I would have to say it comes down to pumpkin or apple with a cinnamon crust top.
mm,
Apple pie with the cinnamon crust top, and I have to choose between those two, and I would say I'd go with the apples cinnamon.
mm. That's a good choice. That's a good choice. Pumpkin is definitely my favorite pie, although I typically associate it, even though we do have it at Christmas too, I typically associate it with Thanksgiving. If there's
Yeah,
not pumpkin pie at Thanksgiving, it's not Thanksgiving. And
correct.
like 3 years ago, that just got missed in the whole family potluck thing. It's people brought everything except for pumpkin pie,
My,
and I'm still not recovered from it. Even though I've had pumpkin pie at Thanksgiving since then, it just, I'm still hurt on that one. So, all right. So last part here. What's your favorite Christmas carol? And maybe a little bit about why.
um, I would say, um, man, I want to pick two, right?
That's fine.
Um, okay. Uh, as sort of the standard, um, straight at the middle would be Joy to the World. Okay. Um, and some of the reasons why, um, and my runner up would be Once in David's Royal City, um, another one. But Joy to the World, I would say uh, Isaac Watts did not believe in Christmas and wrote one of the best Christmas carols ever that will be sung to the end of the world, which I like to think of as God's little joke.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. Joy to the World is probably, I would say that's probably my favorite. True story. I hated Christmas music. And then, I don't, I look back on that and I just think, oh, what an idiot. But I hated Christmas music for a long time. And then I kind of warmed up to it a little bit for the sake of, unity in the body sort of thing. As I was starting to mature. And then I went through the transformation that many guys do in their 30s when they become post-mill. And all of a sudden, Christmas music was just like, yes, I
Yeah.
want all of it. And Joy to the World kind of typifies that just because the message is, I mean, almost every Christmas carol is so spot on about the
Yeah.
the lordship of Christ, but Joy to the World is just it's all right there
That's
on
another
display.
big
So
argument for Christmas, the one time of year when the whole church unifies and becomes post mill for a month.
yep. All of Western civilization to a certain extent too. So well, great. Well, hey Doug, thanks for being on the podcast today. Can you tell everybody who's listening where they can find you and your stuff?
Okay. My blog is dougwills.com. The name of the blog is Blog and Made Blog. And if you go to dougwills.com, we've arranged it so um, pretty much everything I'm involved with, you can find a portal to from that blog somewhere on the front page. New St. Andrews College, Logos School, Canon Press, everything. So that's the place to go.
Great, great. Well, for everything else, sword and staff related, links to social merchandise, our Discord, which of course, Doug, you'd be welcome to join, are in the description to the episode. If you've enjoyed the episode, make sure to share it. Give us a good review if you like it. If you didn't like it, then don't give us a review. That'd be how you can help me out here. So, but that way more folks can find it. Other than that, thanks for listening. Merry Christmas and stay tethered, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Hey everyone, this is not how I normally end our episodes, but this is our last episode of season 1, and I wanted to say some thank yous and give you some things to look forward to. So, let me start with the thank yous. First, I would just want to say that God has blessed the efforts here with Season 1. The conversations that Sword and Staff Revenant has opened up has been farther reaching than I could ever have imagined. My chief end is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. And for my part, I hope that this season has given Him glory. Praise God, from whom all blessings flow. Second, thanks to my wife, my family, and my church family at Proclaim Church for their support. They have been a consistent encouragement to me and have been such a help in providing feedback to make my efforts on this podcast and the end result then for everyone else listening a whole lot better than it would be on my own. Next, I want to give a special thanks to Ward, Jim, and Rich, who helped me in the brainstorming phases of revamping the Sword and Staff and gave me direction on where to go with Season 1. I also want to say thank you to all of our guests this season. Every one of them was a total trooper and worked around the schedule of a guy with a normal 9 to 5 in the Midwest. Also, very importantly, both Josh and Richie have been so gracious in their support of the revamp and entrusting me to take the mission of Sword and Staff forward. Finally, all of you listeners, I am blown away by the way that you have supported this work. The discussions in the Discord, the comments and encouragement on videos and podcast platforms, it's all been so incredibly helpful and encouraging personally to me. You didn't have to show up for Revenant, but you did. And I know you didn't have to. And because of that, it means so much more to me. So thank you. Now a few announcements. January will be a break from regularly scheduled episodes as we prepare material for Season 2. But be on the lookout as we will be announcing what Season 2 is going to be about. And on that note, Season 2 of Revenant will kick off on February 3rd. We're not finished yet. If you want to be as up to speed as possible on those things, then hop on the Discord. It's free, and it is my plan to keep it that way. So, with all of that, Merry Christmas, and have a Happy New Year.